Have you ever wondered why something that used to feel natural suddenly disappears after 60, even when your desire is still there? I ask this because men sit across from me every week and whisper the same fear. Doctor, my body gives up before my mind does. And what scares them most isn't performance, it's the quiet moment when confidence fades and no one explains why. From a medical perspective, what's happening isn't weakness and it isn't failure. It's biology, changing blood flow, gravity, circulation, stress, all shifting in ways most men were never taught to understand. And when you try to fight those changes, the same way you did at 30, your body pushes back harder, is back. But here's the part almost no one tells you. What if the problem isn't that your body is failing, but that you've been putting it in the wrong position to succeed? In my practice, I've watched men regain control, not by trying harder, not with pills or devices, but by making one small intelligent adjustment that works with their physiology instead of against it. And once they understand this, something even more powerful happens. The fear relaxes, the pressure lifts, and the body responds again. Stay with me because in a moment, I'll explain why one simple shift, just a few inches a different angle, can change everything you thought was normal aging, and why missing this detail is the reason so many men give up too soon. When men first sit across from me in the clinic, the conversation almost always begins the same way. They lower their voice, pause for a second, and say, "Doctor, I don't understand what's happening to my body anymore." And that confusion, more than anything physical, is what hurts the most because no one ever told them that after 60, the rules quietly change. From a medical point of view, this is where many men are unintentionally set up to fail. As we age, blood vessels naturally lose elasticity, circulation slows, and the heart has to work harder to push blood where it needs to go. Large vascular studies show that by the early 60s, peak penile blood flow can decline by 20 to 30%, even in men who are otherwise healthy. Desire may still be there, but the delivery system is no longer as efficient, and that gap creates sudden fear. I often use a simple image to help men understand this. Imagine trying to water your garden with a hose that's lost pressure while you're standing uphill and squeezing it tighter out of frustration. The harder you force it, the weaker the flow becomes. That's exactly what happens when men rely on tension effort in positions that demand strength instead of circulation. The body isn't failing, it's being asked to work against gravity, against blood flow, and against its own new limits. And here's where something important shifts. The moment a man realizes this is physics, not masculinity, the panic begins to fade. Because when the problem isn't you, but the way your body is being positioned and stressed, the solution stops feeling hopeless. And in the next part, I'll explain why one small adjustment, something most men overlook entirely, can restore control faster than any pill they're tempted to reach for. Once men understand that their body isn't failing but responding to physics, the next question I hear is almost automatic. So what am I doing wrong? And the answer surprises nearly everyone because it's not about effort, desire, or even hormones. It's about positioning. Specifically, the habit of relying on positions that force the body to fight gravity at the exact moment it needs circulation the most. From a physiological standpoint, this matters more after 60 than most people realize. When a man supports his own body weight, engages large muscle groups, and holds tension, blood is redirected away from the areas that need steady flow. Cardiology and vascular studies consistently show that static muscle contraction can significantly reduce peripheral blood delivery, sometimes by 30% or more during sustained effort. In simple terms, the harder you brace and push the less blood stays where it's needed. I see this pattern again and again in my practice. Men tell me it starts fine, but a minute later, everything fades. What's happening isn't sudden weakness. It's circulation being pulled uphill under stress and against gravity. The body is doing exactly what it's designed to do, protect the heart and prioritize survival. Unfortunately, the position most men default to demands strength first and blood flow second, and that order no longer works with an aging vascular system. Think of it like trying to keep a flashlight bright while squeezing the batteries. You don't need more power, you need less resistance. The moment men stop forcing their bodies into positions that require constant effort, something shifts. Anxiety drops. Breathing deepens, and circulation has a chance to stabilize again. That's when confidence quietly returns, not because of willpower, but because the body finally has room to cooperate. And this leads to the turning point almost every man misses. There are positions that work with gravity, not against it, positions that reduce strain, protect the heart, and allow blood to stay where it belongs. In the next part, I'll explain the first of these positions and why a small change in angle can outperform years of trying harder. This is the moment when most men lean forward and ask me, so which position actually works? And I always slow the conversation down here because the answer isn't about copying something new. It's about removing what's been quietly sabotaging circulation all along. From a medical standpoint, the goal after 60 is simple: reduce strain, reduce tension, and stop pulling blood away from where it needs to stay. That's why positions that allow the body to fully relax, especially those that place the pelvis level or slightly downward, make such a dramatic difference. When the body isn't supporting weight or fighting gravity, the cardiovascular system doesn't have to triage blood away under stress. I've seen this play out repeatedly with patients in their 60s and 70s. Men who struggled to maintain firmness for more than a minute suddenly notice stability returning when the body is no longer braced or rushed. Research on vascular dynamics supports this observation. Relaxed postures with minimal muscle engagement help preserve peripheral blood flow, while also lowering heart rate and oxygen demand. In plain language, the calmer the body, the steadier the circulation. I often describe it like floating instead of swimming upstream. When you stop kicking against the current, the water holds you. Side-lying positions work on this exact principle. The spine stays neutral, breathing deepens naturally, and gravity stops pulling blood away. Instead of chasing firmness, the body is finally allowed to keep it. What surprises most men is how quickly the mental shift follows the physical one. When the body relaxes, the mind follows. Pressure fades, breathing slows, and confidence quietly rebuilds, not because anything was forced, but because nothing was being drained anymore. And once men feel this difference, even once they realize the old rules no longer apply, but there's one critical detail almost everyone misses: a small adjustment that can either protect circulation or undo everything in seconds. In the next part, I'll explain why a difference of just a few inches changes the entire outcome. Right after men finally feel that calm, steady difference, I see the same pattern emerge. They relax. And then, without realizing it, they undo the benefit with one tiny adjustment. It's not dramatic. It's not obvious. But clinically, it's the detail that decides whether circulation stays stable or drains away in seconds. From a physiological perspective, angle matters more than effort. When the pelvis tilts too high or the upper body leans forward, gravity immediately begins pulling blood downward and away. Even a slight elevation can increase venous outflow, making it harder for blood to remain where it's needed. Vascular studies show that changes in body angle can measurably alter regional blood retention, sometimes within moments, especially in older circulatory systems that don't rebound as quickly. I hear men describe this perfectly without knowing the science. They tell me, it feels good at first, and then it suddenly disappears. What's happening isn't loss of desire or arousal, it's physics reasserting itself. The body was relaxed, blood was stable, and then the angle shifted just enough to let gravity take over again. No amount of willpower can override that. I explain it like pouring water into a glass with a hairline crack. The water doesn't vanish all at once, it drains quietly. That's what an incorrect angle does. It doesn't cause immediate failure, it causes slow leakage. And because the change feels so subtle, most men blame themselves instead of the mechanics. Once patients understand this, something important clicks. They stop chasing intensity and start protecting position. The pelvis stays level or slightly downward, the spine remains neutral, breathing stays deep, and circulation holds. This is often the moment men realize they don't need more stimulation, they need more stability. And here's where things get even more interesting. There's another position that removes this risk almost entirely. One that allows the body to fully rest while circulation does the work on its own. In the next part, I'll explain why this option can be a game changer for men who want consistency without strain. After men understand how angle quietly controls circulation, the next realization often surprises them even more. It's not about finding the perfect move, it's about giving the body permission to fully let go. In my practice, the biggest breakthroughs don't happen when men add effort. They happen when effort finally disappears. From a physiological standpoint, this makes complete sense. When the body is tense, stress hormones rise, breathing becomes shallow, and blood is redirected toward large muscle groups and away from peripheral circulation. Clinical data on autonomic balance shows that relaxation, slower breathing, reduced muscle engagement shifts the nervous system toward a parasympathetic state, which supports steadier blood flow and cardiovascular efficiency. In simple terms, calm keeps blood where it's needed. Men often describe this moment without realizing what's changed. They say things like, for the first time, I wasn't rushing, or I stopped worrying about losing it. What they're feeling isn't luck. It's physiology responding to safety instead of pressure. When the body senses it doesn't need to brace or perform, circulation stabilizes instead of fluctuating. I like to compare it to holding sand in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips away. The moment you loosen your grip, everything stays. That's what full relaxation does. The body stops leaking blood through tension, shallow breathing, and constant self-monitoring. Instead of chasing firmness, men allow it to remain. This is why positions that let the body rest completely without supporting weight, without rushing, without fear, often outperform anything that requires strength. Confidence doesn't return because something was forced. It returns because nothing is being taken away anymore. And once men experience this calm, even once they realize how much pressure was silently sabotaging them all along, but there's one more factor that can amplify this effect, something most men overlook because it seems too simple to matter. In the next part, I'll explain why breathing alone can make or break everything you've just learned. After men finally learn how to relax their body, there's one final switch that determines whether everything holds steady or quietly collapses. And it's something they're doing every second without realizing it breathing. In my clinic, I've seen progress stall, not because a position was wrong, but because the breath never slowed down enough for the body to feel safe. From a medical perspective, breathing is directly tied to circulation. Shallow, rapid breathing activates the sympathetic nervous system, the same stress response that redirects blood away from peripheral areas and towards survival organs. Studies on cardiovascular regulation show that slow diaphragmatic breathing can reduce heart rate, lower vascular resistance, and improve blood distribution within minutes. In plain terms, how you breathe decides whether blood stays or drains. Men often tell me, I didn't notice my breathing at all. That's exactly the problem. When someone holds their breath or breathes high in the chest, pressure builds silently, oxygen levels fluctuate, tension creeps back in, and circulation becomes unstable again, even if everything else was done correctly. The body interprets shallow breathing as urgency, and urgency always steals blood. I explain it with a simple image. Breathing is like the rhythm of a pump. When it's smooth and slow, flow stays consistent. When it becomes erratic, everything downstream flickers. That's why men who focus on long, steady exhales, letting the belly rise and fall, naturally often notice immediate stability without changing anything else. This is also where confidence quietly locks in. When breathing slows, the mind stops racing. When the mind stops racing, and the body no longer feels watched or tested, blood flow isn't interrupted by panic or pressure. It's allowed to continue uninterrupted. For many men, this is the first time they realize how much control they actually have. And now comes the most important question of all. What happens when you combine the right position, the right angle, full relaxation, and proper breathing, and then remove the last source of strain entirely? In the next part, I'll share why one final position brings everything together in a way most men never expect. After breathing finally settles and circulation stabilizes, many men ask me a quiet, honest question. Is there a way to take pressure off completely? And this is where everything comes together. There is a position that does exactly that, not by adding stimulation, but by removing strain altogether. From a physiological standpoint, this works because the body is no longer asked to hold itself up or compensate for gravity. When a man can fully rest, spine-supported, pelvis-neutral muscles, disengaged, the cardiovascular system doesn't need to divert blood for balance or effort. Clinical observations and movement studies show that when large stabilizing muscles are inactive, peripheral blood flow remains steadier, heart rate variability improves, and oxygen delivery becomes more efficient. In everyday language, the body finally stops multitasking. I hear the same reaction from patients who try this for the first time. It felt different, calmer, they tell me. That calm isn't emotional, it's biological. With no strain to manage, the nervous system stays in a restorative state, and circulation doesn't get interrupted by microbursts of tension. Blood isn't pulled away to support posture or movement. It's allowed to remain where it's already working. I often describe this position as putting the body on autopilot. Just like cruise control on a highway, once the speed is set, there's no need to keep pressing the pedal. The body maintains stability without constant input. And when men experience that steadiness, they realize how much effort used to sabotage them without their awareness. What's most surprising is how quickly confidence follows. When nothing needs to be forced, the fear of losing control fades. Men stop monitoring every second, stop bracing for disappointment, and simply stay present. That mental relief feeds directly back into the body, creating a loop that sustains itself. But there's one last mistake that can still undo all of this, a habit so common, most men don't even realize they're doing it. In the next part, I'll explain why trying to speed things up at the wrong moment can quietly reverse everything you've just gained. Right when men finally feel that steady calm, there's a reflex that shows up almost automatically, the urge to speed things up. I see it constantly in my practice. The moment confidence returns, the body wants to prove it can keep going. And unfortunately, that rush is often what pulls the plug on circulation. From a physiological standpoint, speed changes the entire equation. Faster movement increases muscle engagement, raises heart rate, and spikes oxygen demand. Research on vascular response shows that sudden intensity shifts can divert blood flow away from peripheral areas and back toward large muscles and core stabilization, especially in older cardiovascular systems that adapt more slowly. In simple terms, when pace jumps too fast, blood gets reassigned. Men describe this without realizing what's happening. They tell me, it was fine, and then it just faded. That fade isn't random. It's the body reacting to a sudden demand it wasn't prepared to sustain. The nervous system switches out of its calm state, breathing tightens, and circulation becomes unstable again, not because something was wrong, but because timing was off. I often explain it like warming up a classic car. You don't slam the accelerator the second the engine turns on. You let everything reach operating temperature first. The body works the same way. When rhythm stays slow and consistent, blood flow remains steady. When things accelerate too quickly, pressure builds and flow drops quietly, predictably. This is where patience becomes a physical skill, not a personality trait. Men who learn to stay in that slower rhythm notice something powerful. Stability lasts longer than intensity ever did. The body isn't being challenged to keep up, it's being allowed to continue. And once men feel that difference, they understand that control isn't about momentum, it's about timing. And now we arrive at the final piece. Most men never connect. Even when position, angle, relaxation, breathing, and pacing are right, there's one internal factor that determines whether everything holds together emotionally. In the next part, I'll explain why the mind, not the body, often makes the final decision. After everything is finally aligned, position, angle, relaxation, breathing, and pace, there's one last factor that decides whether stability lasts or slips away. And it isn't physical at all. It's the moment the mind steps in and starts checking, judging, and bracing for loss. I hear this from patients constantly. They say, I was fine until I started thinking about it. From a neurological perspective, that makes perfect sense. The instant the brain shifts into monitoring mode, the stress response activates, cortisol rises, muscle tone increases, breathing tightens, and blood flow subtly redirects. Studies on performance anxiety show that even mild cognitive stress can disrupt autonomic balance, especially in older adults whose systems don't switch back as quickly. I explain it like walking on ice. The moment you start thinking, don't slip, your body stiffens, and stiffness is what makes slipping more likely. The same thing happens here. When the mind starts testing the body prepares for threat. And threat always steals circulation. What surprises many men is that confidence doesn't come from trying to feel confident. It comes from removing the need to check at all. When attention shifts away from self-monitoring and toward connection sensation and presence, the nervous system stays calm. Blood flow isn't interrupted by doubt, it's allowed to continue naturally. This is often the most emotional breakthrough I witness. Men realize that nothing was wrong with them physically. The body had been doing its job all along. It was the constant internal pressure that kept pulling the emergency brake. When that pressure lifts, stability feels effortless, almost quiet. And this brings us to the final truth that reframes everything you've heard so far. After 60 control doesn't come from force, speed, or vigilance. It comes from trust. In the final part, I'll show you how understanding this changes not just performance, but how men see aging itself. After watching this pattern repeat for years in my practice, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. After 60, success no longer belongs to the man who tries harder. It belongs to the man who understands when to stop fighting his own body. And for many patients, this realization is more freeing than any technique. From a medical standpoint, aging shifts the balance of control. Younger bodies tolerate force, speed, and mistakes. Older bodies reward cooperation. Research on healthy aging and autonomic regulation shows that systems function best when stress is minimized and signals of safety are consistent. In simple terms, the body performs better when it feels trusted instead of tested. I often hear men say something that stays with me. I thought getting older meant losing something. But what they discover is the opposite. They gain clarity, they gain efficiency, they learn that when pressure is removed, the body doesn't collapse, it stabilizes. And stability, not intensity, is what sustains results over time. I like to explain it this way. Early in life, you drive by pressing the gas. Later in life, you drive by reading the road. You anticipate, you adjust, and you arrive with less strain. That's exactly how the body wants to be treated now. When men stop trying to dominate their physiology and start working with it, confidence returns quietly without struggle. This is often the emotional turning point. Men stop measuring themselves against their past and start working with who they are today. And that shift doesn't just change outcomes, it changes how they see aging itself. Aging stops feeling like decline and starts feeling like a different kind of intelligence. And that leads directly into what matters most next. Because understanding this isn't just about one moment, it's about carrying this mindset forward. In the final section, I'll bring everything together and show you how small, consistent choices protect confidence for years to come. Before we end, I want you to remember this. What you've heard today isn't about trick shortcuts or trying to become who you were decades ago. It's about understanding how the male body actually works after 60, how blood flow, gravity, breathing, relaxation, and trust all come together. When men stop fighting their physiology and start working with it, stability returns, confidence follows, and aging no longer feels like a loss. It feels like clarity. If you're watching this and thinking, this finally makes sense, you're not alone. Many men I see felt the same confusion, the same quiet fear before they understood that nothing was broken. And if this video helped you feel calmer, more hopeful, or more in control, then it's already doing its job. I encourage you to save this video because sometimes confidence doesn't come from remembering techniques. It comes from remembering that your body deserves patience, not pressure. If you found this helpful, tap the like button so more men can see this message and subscribe to the channel for clear, respectful medical guidance on male physiology and healthy aging. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos where I share the latest medical insights in a way that's practical and easy to understand. And before you go, I'd like to hear from you. What part of today's video resonated with you the most? The role of position, breathing, relaxation, or mindset? Leave a comment below. I read them and they help shape what we talk about next. Take care of your body, be patient with yourself, and remember, understanding is the first step toward confidence.